Welcome into the Locked On Bulldogs postcast. I am Tenitra Batiste along with Jarvis Davis, and we are here to give you guys a little bit of the deets and our quick thoughts, quick reaction to tonight's Georgia Bulldogs game against the Kentucky Wildcats. Of course, Georgia went into the game with a number 1 ranking, Kentucky ranked number 20. But you would never have known that these were 2 top 25 ranked teams the way Georgia came out of the gates. Of course, they get the 51-13 win, improved to a perfect 6-0 on the season. But what impressed me the most, or one of the things I should say, because there were a number of things that were impressive in this game, Jarvis, Georgia scored touchdowns. Yes, touchdowns on the first 3 drives and scored touchdowns on 4 of those first 5 drives. So did you feel like you finally saw the aggressive play calling that we were looking for from Mike Bobo?
Absolutely. When you think of, I think this was the game that Mike Bobo said, I understand what Kirby Smart wants to do. I know you my dog. I understand. I get it. Pun intended. But this is who we are. We are a team that can pass the football. We can take advantage of the opposing team's secondary pretty much every Saturday for the rest of this doggone season, even going into the SEC championship, because when you think about the weapons that they have the best player in the country in Brock Bowers. Notice what I just said. The best player in the country in Brock Bowers in 2023. Y'all know Caleb Williams is an absolute man-child. He's going to be number 1 pick in the overall pick in the NFL draft next year if he comes out. But I feel like this year, Brock Bowers has proved that he is the guy that if you get him the rock, they will score. And I think that you add to that Ra Thomas, you add to that Dominic Lovett, you add to that guy like Dejon Edwards and Oscar Delp, who got him a touchdown catch this game tonight. So when you add on top of that all of those weapons right there, I really feel like this particular offense can be better if they understand, like Mike Bobo understands. If Kirby Smart follow Mike Bobo lead on this one, I really feel like this team offensively can be much better than it was last year, because the pass catchers that they have this year, I just really feel like this can be really, really special.
Yeah, I would venture to say the same, man. Literally, when 12 different individuals catch passes in a game, that speaks volumes about just how potent it could be. And of course, we say pass catchers because you had your running backs as well as your receivers and your tight ends. It was just an absolute, it was just amazing because it was absolutely balanced. And when I say that, balanced across the passing game, but also then balanced across the pass plays and the run plays. Now, I mentioned that, but also I think it's very important to note just what you said. Taking advantage of the weapons that you have in the passing game and being able to score those touchdowns that we talked about all on pass plays. I think that's pretty impressive as well. And yeah, Brock Bowers, 7 catches, 132 yards. I mean, you're essentially averaging almost 2 first downs every time you catch the ball. I mean, that's really what that means. That's how you are really impacting the game and moving the chains, but not just by himself. And granted, like you said, Ray Thomas, Dominic Lovett, but Marcus Roseman St. Jack, who caught that first ball, that's impressive. I mean, that to me is impressive as well, because he's a guy who sometimes we forget just how good he is because he's kind of been around for a while and he's just kind of been consistent.
The wily veteran.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah, the consistent old OG in the room, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Consistent OG in the building. But the OG almost got himself 100 yards, just 1 yard short of 100 yards for the game. 4 catches, again, very efficient. You're talking about almost 25 yards a catch when you average it out. So I do like that because, to your point, Jarvis, this is a team and a program that's known for their run game. And don't get me wrong, run game was on 173 yards. So you basically saw the Dawgs do to Kentucky, gave them a taste of their own medicine, right? But I think what we wanted to see Bobo do was basically open up that offense. And the way you open up an offense is to let your passing game do all the talking. And they finally did that. And we knew they could. Now, a couple days ago on the Atlanta Football Party, which is our weekly show talking Dogs football, we talked about Kentucky's lack of efficiency on third down and wanting to see Georgia then force them into situations where they were in third and longs. And they did a very great job of that, to the tune of two for 11 on third down conversions. So when you look at this defense and how they performed tonight, how were they able to keep Kentucky in unfavorable down and distance situations?
I mean, I think they took away their best player, right? Ray Davis was the guy who just ripped all over Florida last week, and obviously that was the game plan, trying to come in and take advantage of Georgia's vulnerability to the quarterback running the football, for the most part on the edges, and they tried to take advantage of that to start the game off. But when you really take a look at what this Georgia defense was able to do. And I think you brought up a great point with the whole third down conversions, that they made them one-dimensional. Yes. And when you look at Devin Leary, I even tweeted out during the game. I was kind of jokingly, but I was joking, but I was dead serious. I was like, Devin Leary is a poo-poo, as far as throwing the football, because there were times where Kentucky wide receivers were running wide open, and he just missed them. Or the guy just dropped the ball. So it just seems like Kentucky just wasn't mentally ready for this game, because I think that, you talk about all the penalties that they had on the offensive side of the football. It just seems like they just weren't quite ready. And I think that Georgia's defense was able to take advantage of that, right? Like as far as you start seeing them start sending pressure from the second level. You saw Jamon Dumas-Johnson get home a couple of times, and that's I talked about him being a guy needing to step up in this game because he hasn't been playing on the level where he needs to be in order for this defense to get to at least a level of meet the level of expectation that Kirby Smart has for them, for his defense, period, across the board. So I think that your defense, we saw the defense kind of grow up just a little bit, as far as, hey, stepping up to the tags, like, hey, y'all better not let nobody come up in here between the hedges and run the football on y'all like that, because we know what that can bring for an offense, and having a two-way go as far as you don't know what they're going to be throwing at you. And then the main thing was that they're able to get those guys to one-dimensional and make Devin Leary make throws, and you saw the result of that. Sitting back there trying to make throws on a regular basis.
Exactly. Yeah. 10 of 26 for just 128 yards. And like you said, a quarterback that could be mobile. Well, if you have 3 carries for a negative 28 yards, I'm going to say you're not really as mobile as maybe you were thought to be. And again, it's also important that Georgia made a statement early and said, hey, Ray Davis, you're certainly not going to be the reason that Kentucky not just wins this game, but also you're not going to be the reason that Kentucky competes. And they were able to hold Ray Davis to 59 yards as well on 15 carries. And really, that was only because one of those carries was for 11 yards. So that number, that yardage or average, if you will, would have been even worse. So yeah, it was the dominating performance that we wanted to see. Now, I don't know if FanDuel would have stated this ahead of time, that they thought that this was going to be, I mean, we know that, Georgia, of course, was favorites, but we don't know if Georgia was 38-point favorites per se. But anyway, FanDuel probably at least has some information for you that could be helpful in terms of games, because we know, Jarvis, that there are some big matchups come Sunday, NFL Sunday, if you will. But want some tips? Jarvis and FanDuel are going to tell you what you need to know for football on a Sunday.
Folks, Jarvis Davis here for FanDuel. I want you to talk to or mess with and go to this website and go to the best sports book in America. Guess what, guys? Snap into the action with the NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book right now. New customers, if you have not gone to FanDuel before, I don't know why, because it is the best sports book in the entirety of America. New customers are going to get $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. All you got to do is just go to FanDuel.com/locked-on. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. Guess what, guys? You don't have to worry about anybody getting your information. You got to worry about none of that stuff. The app is safe, secure, it's super easy to use. Also, there's a wide range of betting options, like T mentioned. Like you talking about the spread, I think it was 14.5 points coming into this game. Georgia covered that very easily. Did you win some money? If you didn't, you are slipping. So I need you to go to fanduel.com/locked on right now because they have this $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. So all you got to do is go visit fanduel.com/locked on and kick off the NFL season because FanDuel is the official sportsbook betting partner of the NFL.
Not a bad deal to spend $5 to maybe get 200. I mean, that's the same $5 that you would probably spend on your coffee. And this way, it'll actually pay dividends with FanDuel. Jarvis, I want to go back to something as well. It's kind of like two sides of the same coin, and that's the running coin, the rushing coin, right? I wanted to go back to the fact that, because to me, this is still impressive. Kentucky in juxtaposition to Auburn. Auburn rolled up 219 yards on this Georgia defense just a week ago. And you heard player after player after player talk about the fact that they had pride and they weren't about to let this happen again. And they were going to make sure that Kentucky knew that, hey, you can't just come in to Athens and just run on us. Well, no, because you actually held them to about a third, actually less than a third of what you allowed for with Auburn with just 55 yards. So I just wanted to kind of go back to that, Jarvis, and get some just more expounding on how you feel like Georgia was able to do that, particularly in establishing that run defense early and then consistently showing that they could stop the run throughout this game.
Yeah, I think it starts with the linebacker play, right? Like because when you think about being in certain different types of formations, there are certain guys that have a responsibility to make sure they get into those right run fits, and I think that Smell London and Jamon Dumas Johnson, those guys were coming downhill and fitting right where they needed to be on certain plays, and a lot of and also. It kind of goes into this whole team factor too. Like when you think about, offense, defense, special teams, like the way the offense played, they scored 14 points in the first quarter. That's almost matched the amount of points they scored in the first quarter in the entire 5 games that the previous 5 games that they played in. So think about that for a second. Like they put up a lot of points when it's as far as 2023 goes. We know what they were able to do. As far as in the previous years, they were able to put up a lot of points, and they are in the fourth quarter. They got the backups in and all that stuff. That's what we're used to seeing, right?
Right.
But that hasn't been the case this year. But for them to be able to come out, put some points on the board, get that defense get that defense comfortable, give that defense a lead, you get the right guys start. Now you got guys like Michael Williams coming off the edge and rushing the passer because this team is one-dimensional. And we know that was Kentucky's biggest weakness. That's why they were able to stop the run because, hey, they had to catch up. They knew they were going for it on fourth down in the second quarter because they know for a fact they were down. They have to get touchdowns. They can't settle for field goals. So I think that the fact that the way the offense played, I think that helped drive this game home and get it to where it needs to be, where you saw the backups. You saw Brock Vanderbilt in the game and saying, you know what? The offense did their job, so the defense can easily do their job. And I think you start seeing those two parts working together, and that's what the result of it was what you saw tonight. And having those backups in and saying, we understand Kentucky has been a pretty consistent team, and Mark Stoops has done an excellent job there. But, hey, y'all still Kentucky. And yes, we're now won 13 straight against you guys or 14 straight against you guys. Yeah. So that's where we are right now. This is exactly how it's supposed to be, and I think it was a product of those two units playing together.
Yeah. And when you dig into the numbers just a little bit in terms of winning, extending their winning streak to 23 straight games, the Bulldogs, that is, and are the SEC's lone unbeaten team this season. You also called it out, 14 in a row over Kentucky and 33 straight regular season games dating back to 2020, regular season wins against Mississippi State. And how do you do that this week, right? How do you get into your first game with a top 25 team and be able to literally manhandle them. One of the ways you're able to manhandle them is for Carson Beck to absolutely command this offense. It was really his, and I say his best performance because of course you hope that he continues to improve week over week, but we're actually seeing it, right? So it's one thing to hope like, hey, your quarterback gets better. He gets more confident. If he makes a mistake, like the pick that he threw, he bounces right back and he's good to go. But 28 of 35 is also a very, very clean, very efficient game. I mean, that's like here, I'm doing the mental math. That's like 80%. You literally completed 80% of your passes, 389 yards, 4 touchdowns. What a night for Carson Beck.
Yeah, like I know people talked about how he grew up last week, you know, against, you know, he grew up in the last matchup, you know.
Right. Well, he must be grown this week.
Right. Like, but this game right here, T. Like this almost is like, hey, you getting to party with mom and dad and the blue lights in the basement party.
I'm like,
you know what I'm saying? Right, you can come kicking it with the adults now. You know, you can go into the basement and say, hey, mom might even pass you a little strawberry daiquiri or something, you know, with a little twang in it. Ooh, why does it taste like this, mom?
Because you're grown.
Yeah, because you grown now. Carson Beck is grown now. The way he was throwing the football, oh my gosh, T. Like when you think about ball placement and leading your receiver to water to drink. And he was doing that tonight. That pass to Rosemary Jackson, oh my God, that was a perfect pass. Like you can't ask for a better pass like that. All he had to do was put his hands out there and the ball was right there. Even and then on the penalty, when they had the penalty on that play and he caught the defense off guard, he threw that ball. All Jackson had to do was just turn around. Boom, ball was right there in his chest. He just fall down and catch it. And I'm just like, this dude is just throwing some. He's literally, he's in the blue lights in the basement party right now. Drinking some strawberry daiquiris with mom and dad, and they just kicking it right now. And I think that Mike Bobo understands that. And when you talk about completing your first 12 passes and the way Mike Bobo was calling plays and stuff like that, I was just like, oh my God, this was a beautiful thing to watch. It was a beautiful thing to watch because I know I had my reservations about Carson Beck to start the season, and I think rightfully so. But now I'm starting to see, hey, this kid got something. He got something, and I think he's kind of really leaning into it because, hey, all you got to do is just find 19, and you're starting to see, you see that throw and catch by Ra Thomas tonight as well. This passing game for Georgia is a strength. Yeah. This passing game is a strength. They need to lean into it. Mike Bobo is, and Kirby Smart needs to get on board too, because this is what can carry you to another SEC championship and potentially making a run in the college football playoff.
Yeah, an efficiency rating of 204.5. Absolutely staggering by Carson Beck. 11 touchdowns and just 3 picks in his first 6 games this season. Now listen, and look, we're getting a comment from AW22. He says, that's what I wanted from Beck. I just wanted him throwing the ball because the guy can throw. Also, Brock Bowers, AW22 says, what a game for him too. I agree with both of you on Beck. Appreciate you stopping by. And yeah, listen, AW, we need to give Beck his flowers when he's there because we talked about conservative Carson, right? And tonight, we didn't see conservative Carson. We saw Bobo allow him to let it rip, and then he ripped. And listen, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the really great things we saw out of Georgia tonight. But also, Jarvis, there's always room for improvement. There's always opportunity. So we'll talk a little bit about what those just little areas of improvement could be for the rest of this season as Georgia moves forward. Boy, oh boy. So the other thing I wanted to talk about, or just kind of ask you before we kind of go into areas of improvement. It's almost, I almost feel odd, right? Odd saying that when you drop 51 on a team and you did it. And this is one more positive thing that I want to say before we kind of walk into areas that you think they may improve in. Going back to the grown conversation of what you want to see out of your quarterback and that he has matured is you come out of that halftime, right? And sometimes it's a little bit of a letdown. You take your foot off the gas or what have you. And not saying Georgia did that, but in this case, Kentucky gets an interception kind of coming out of halftime, and maybe that they're thinking, okay, we're in this thing, right? Wrong, because it's 34-13. That's all you score for the rest of the second half. I think that's an important piece as well, because then the Bulldogs go on to score another 17 points. Of course, that's, you got Beck in, and then, of course, you have Vanderbilt. And so you had a collective there. But I think it also goes to the maturity of not just Carson Beck, but the maturity of the Dogs to say, okay, you picked him off. Ray Davis, you got your 26-yard touchdown. Great. You think you're back in the game because you cut the deficit a little bit. And then Georgia comes in and puts their foot on the gas. The reason I mention that is because I think that's also important as well, because teams are always going to be coming for you. You're the 2-time national champion, and they're going to try their best to go into halftime, especially if they feel like they have a shot, and you don't want them to feel like they can ever come back and do anything. So I think in addition to the 34 points in the first half, I think the 17 points in the second half are important as well, just to make sure people understand, or other teams understand, Georgia can not make it a game in the first half, and then they can come back and do it with authority in the second half as well.
Yeah, that's the thing that you talk about being battle tested, right? Like you've been in certain situations before, because we've seen them down in the first half of games and be able to come back and figure it out. But I think that what we saw tonight is the product of working the improvement that we've seen game by game. Yeah. Right. We've seen Carson Beck, start a little shaky in the first half, like, all right, man, well, we need to see what Brock Vandegrift could do. Like, or, like these are some of the things that, that thoughts that crossed my mind early on in the season. Right. But as you see the progression, right, that you see the confidence that the offensive coordinator, Mike Bobo, has in Carson Beck. Like, we start to see that. Like, once you start seeing the OC start to have that confidence in his quarterback, that quarterback feels that, he understands that, and you starting to see a product of that on the field. Because we talked about in the previous segment, like, hey, look at the throws that this dude is making. He's very confident in throwing the football. So I think that, being able to jump out on teams in the first half is becoming a full circle team. Because like you said, you've experienced starting the slow starts. Like we've seen that. Hopefully we've moved past that. And now we can start to see, hey, getting off to a quick start. Yeah. Hey, making sure that running game is getting to the level where Kirby wants it. Yes. Now I know what the identity of this team is. The identity of this team is they can pass the rock. Yep. And they have plenty of guys that can get the job done. It started with 19, and working your way down. And it's not too far off now. Right. Thomas, that dude is a talented football player. But Brock Bowers, the best doggone college football player in the country. And I think that we're starting to see this Georgia football team come together. And I really feel like this is an identity. Mm-hmm. We're starting to see that, the offense could be leading the way. And the defense is following suit. As far as what this identity of this team is. And I think that this offense is good enough to do that. And as much as young talent that they have on the defensive side of football, they has just as much talent and more experienced talent on the offensive side. And I think we're starting to see what that is and what that looks like. And I think that, they need to lean into it as much as they possibly can.
Yeah. And one of the things that you called out as we each week talk about what that identity looks like or feels like week to week, and we use kind of our one word, yours was composure. And I think you saw that really in all phases of the game, because again, the offense, they made a statement from the beginning. And in order for you to keep that consistently throughout 4 quarters, you got to have composure, right? Same thing for the defense. When, there's a turnover and Kentucky comes back and scores, as a young defense, that could shake you, but it didn't shake them. They really just kind of put their foot to the gas and said, okay, shake it off, and we're going to have what I like to call selective amnesia. Now, at Willie Carswell Jr. says, best player. I would argue that Brock Bowers is the best player in college football. And you know what, Nate Dogg? Jarvis would agree with you, because he definitely would. Yes, and you know what?
I'm there already.
I think it is. Yes, I think it is the super valid argument, and we appreciate the cosign and appreciate you checking us out. The one thing I will say is, and let me give my one word as well. My one word for this past week for them was gritty, and it may not have been a 26-0 type gritty 27-0 type gritty, if you will, or grimy, but it was still gritty and grimy because I think sometimes you have to get in there and you have to impose your will, right? So
Right.
Kirby Smart talked about this. He talked about the fact that anytime they play Kentucky, anytime the Dogs play UGA, or the Dogs play Kentucky, Dogs play the Wildcats, it's a fight. It's a fight because they're like a grimy physical team.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I think Georgia was like, we're not just going to match your physical, but we're going to out physical you. That's what I saw out of them. So that's why I say I'm going to stick with my word of gritty, because I think I saw a gritty, gutsy performance start to finish, that it didn't matter what Kentucky's game plan was. Georgia not just had an answer for it, but they executed. However, as with anything, there can always be just a little bit of room for improvement. And Jarvis, whether that is play calling, whether that is execution of the plays, or whether that's an individual player, what area, what player would you want to say, hey, not saying that player didn't do well tonight, but hey, I'd like to see you step it up next week when Georgia takes on Vandy?
Oh, it has to be the defensive line. I want those guys to start causing some havoc that I know they can. I'm not just saying that they should be. I know that they can. I know Warren Brinson can. I know Mykel Williams can. I know those guys can cause some havoc. And I think that, once you get that opportunity to make a defense, offense one-dimensional like they did tonight, I want to see some of the. I don't want to have to see them. Hey, have to come from the second level and sending corners and sending the star and sending Dumas Johnson and all those guys to put the quarterback on the ground. I want to see Brinson. I want to see Mykel Williams, because I know those guys are absolutely capable of doing it. So that's what I want to see. I want to see progression up front. We starting to see a little progression with the linebacker core. We're starting to see a little progression with the secondary. I want to see those guys up front do what they need to do. I'm not asking them to be all first-round draft picks and everything like that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not yet anyway. But when you talk about what you're capable of doing and doing it that consistently, that's what I need to see more improvement from on that defensive line up front.
Yeah, and I think that's the conversation we've been having as well. Just kind of, like you said, looking for that defensive front to really kind of dictate the game, right? And so that, like you said, whether it's on the run game, in particular the run game, but literally just making sure that, hey, you're never going to get to the second level. That's never going to be a conversation. So like you, that's probably where my eyes are going to be next week, because I feel like in every other phase, I feel like with the secondary, if we're talking defense, also all phases of the offense, I feel like I was very pleased with the O-line on through. So I think, I'll probably have my eyes peeled on that D-line as well. Well, like we said, guys, Georgia heads up to Vandy. They're going to have their third SEC game of the year. And listen,
noon kickoff. It's going to be early.
Exactly. Early bird special for UGA. So therefore, you'll hear from Jarvis and I at a decent time next Saturday. But anyway, listen, we appreciate you guys stopping by. Congratulations, of course, to Dog Nation with that 15-13 absolute manhandling of Kentucky to improve to 6-0. And we will call it another, 6 weeks in a row, number one ranking for the Georgia Bulldogs. For Jarvis Davis, I am Tenitra Batiste. And as always, guys, don't stop here with the Georgia Postcast. Check us out all throughout the week with all of our Locked On Postcast, our podcast here on the Locked On Sports Network. We'll see you guys. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.